to cloud. Great. Well, folks, welcome to the E-SIG meeting. We are September 3rd. It has been a long weekend in the US, and it's going to be a lot of fun playing catch up and getting the brain back into gear. One of the first meetings of the day. So welcome. The general rule of thumb is I give everybody a recap from our last conversation, and then we can start working on the issues that were open and where we were, things we've got to finish off. So the main drive at the moment is to try to complete the hardware specification document so that we can unblock lots of different people, not just in the E-SIG, who want to target the embedded platform and have an idea what we're actually trying to address. And that was a large part of the discussion we had last time with our colleagues from Asia. So we went through the recap from the Europe Asia meeting, and then on the Asia US meeting, we tried to make some more progress on the document just to try and get it out of the way. And I wanted to go through the discussion points here and make sure that this makes sense. And then after that, I we can try and close out this document with some action items. So before I go any further, are there any volunteers for taking meeting notes? I have tried AI solutions and transcripts, but they don't work, or at least not as well as a human making meeting notes, unfortunately.
I can take notes if you'd
Okay.
like.
I think I managed to steal Emily's notes from last time and add a section to it. So I'll share the link there if you want to have a little look.
Oh, yeah, if you have a Google Doc, that's perfect. I'll take notes and everybody can add the attendees. Okay, yeah, everybody's there. Okay, I'll take notes.
Awesome. Brilliant. Okay. So from last time then, so we looked at the PR that Dominic had submitted to update the platform definition document. We started to go through that and then went through some basics of defining what it means to have a targeted platform. Because there were some questions about if we don't list an operating system or if we don't list a particular piece of hardware, does that mean we definitely we're not interested in it, we don't want to support it? And the answer was no. So what we're trying to do is define a critical minimum set of hardware that the software features we define should support, and that the E-SIG would align on that and say, if we were going to make a recommendation to anybody else, it should be done considering these platforms. That doesn't mean that other platforms are not supported. It just means that it's not a core focus of what the E-SIG's working on at the moment. So for things like memory protection units and memory management units, the question came up, are we going to rule those out? Do we just not support them? And the answer was, no, they should obviously be supported where they're available, but we should at the bare minimum support devices that have neither. So yes, that will mean that some features are not applicable on those devices. It will mean that it might result in very slow implementations for devices without an MMU or an MPU. But that's okay. That's the bare minimum. So that's where we got to on the hardware memory management support. We discussed minimum footprints for RAM and minimum footprints for volatile storage. And we came to 512 kilobytes of RAM and 1 megabyte of non-volatile storage as reasonable targets. I didn't want to set it too aggressively, and we had a chat with Zin and the folks at Intel about it, and they were suggesting that going smaller could work, but then it's difficult from a practical point of view for WAMA. I mean, it's WAMA with a whole bunch of additional customizations, I think. That's what what Zin was talking about. So we said, okay, at Siemens, we've seen 340K produce a usable platform, but perhaps more realistically, 512K of RAM is good to go. So that's what we settled with. And then we started to think about, well, that's the hardware, target hardware specifications. Now, what about real-time operating systems and ISAs? So we discussed, and Intel shared a lot more about what ARC is, which sounds really cool. It's kind of sounds like some sort of adaptive hardware platform. It sounds really interesting, but it's definitely beyond the scope of what we would consider targeting. So then we started to think about the ISAs we really wanted to focus on. And we had a discussion, and I think we were looking at part of Dominic's changes and part of the original document. So what we came to were things like, well, it's Extensa, it's RISC-V with 32-bit and 64-bit support, it's ARM with 32 and 64-bit support, and then x86, because that's probably the development environment for most of the embedded work, and having a good development environment is important. So we said, yeah, to that. So that kind of wrapped it up. And then we talked about MIPS and said, so the discussion from last time, and we're like, oh, does that mean we won't support MIPS? Like, no, it just means it wouldn't be a focus of discussion inside the E-SIG. And that's where we got to. And then the question was, we should raise this with Martin and see what Amazon needs, because of all of the partners we have in the SIG, we felt that Amazon was the one that, as of today, has to target the widest possible range of both operating systems and ISAs. So wanted to check that. And that led on to a conversation about operating systems. And we started to think about them and said, wow, this is getting like, there was some concern that the matrix of supported platforms, the combination of ISAs and operating systems, was getting quite large. And then we started to think about this from a rational point of view. If we're in the embedded SIG, does this mean that we want to focus on those operating systems that nobody else will? So that would probably be the real-time operating systems. There are others in the community who will talk and focus on things like Linux and Windows. And is that sufficient? Do we need to put a special effort into focusing on those platforms? Or would our time be better spent focusing on the real-time operating systems? And if we're focusing on the real-time operating systems, then we said then we can reduce it to Zephyr, FreeRTOS, and NuttX. And then do we support Linux with a real-time kernel patch? What difference is there between that really and Linux from a WebAssembly runtime point of view? Are we better off just going for Linux and Windows? And then if Linux and Windows are in the list, why? If they're going to be targeted by other environments, what do we want to do that's different in there? And are we okay just living with the contributions from others? Is there anything specific that the embedded SIG would want to do there? And Martin, I saw your hand go up, and I think I've more or less got to the bottom of the update. So let's go. All yours, Martin.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot for sharing the update. So I just have a question on x86. You said that we are going to include this as part of the E-SIG, but because this is most likely a development platform, but then we're not including Linux, which is a development platform as well, right? So
yep,
what is the difference?
Consistency here, yeah, that's a good point. So then we didn't discuss it actually in the last meeting, but it would be, I think it would be a good idea to call that out in the document and say, here's the targeted platforms, but a huge part of the embedded developer support is the development environment and what that looks like. So maybe we should call that out and say, here's the targeted platforms we want to address for deployment, and for development experience, we're focusing on Linux and Windows and x86. If everybody's happy with that, I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I can open a CR or pull request, and if anyone is against, I will have a chance to comment if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to move the discussion to the PR?
Yeah, because I don't think we have everyone on the call anyway, unless anyone wants to discuss this now. But otherwise, I'll just open the PR and let people discuss it there.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. We can do that there. Open it up. I think it makes perfect sense, to be honest, to split the two. But any other views on that one? Ooh, okay. So then, what else did we discuss?
So about the meet.
Yeah, Marcin? No, go.
To interrupt you.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a comment on MIPS. Yeah, it's I understand that it's not a popular platform, so I think it'll be okay with not having it on the list. Yeah, we'll just keep an eye on it from our perspective anyway. So if the E-SIG doesn't want to cover this platform, I think it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that we wouldn't. I think this is where I need to add some text, and I'll put a PR in for it. I had a to do from last week, last meeting, but I'll put a PR in for today, and essentially in the document, it's just some clarifying text to explain what we mean by a targeted platform, and that if it supports all of these platforms, the E-SIG will go, yeah, that's a pretty good, we're good to recommend it. It doesn't mean it can't support more. And the other thing we discussed last time was the impact of Moore's law on the embedded world. There are trends, and Moore's law is one of them. So we see this trend of RISC-V being perhaps more popular in China and parts of Europe, but there's a lack of production devices, but it's more than likely coming. And then we looked also at MMUs, MPUs, and the conversation kind of turned to, you're going to be hard pressed to find a hardware platform today that you want as a development environment that doesn't have at least in it memory protection unit on it. So what's the point? And that came up. We said, well, okay, well, there are some production devices today that don't have either. We can't really rule it out because it felt like there's a lot of members who needed that support, but that this was a trend that would go away over time, and essentially you would end up with at the very least an memory protection unit, and at some point a memory management unit. And so that was a trend that was coming, and we can see it. So maybe just to mention it in the document and say, okay, for now we'd like to target devices that don't have either, but we realize that over time that this is likely to change, and at some point we would end up requiring at the very least a memory protection unit. And that was something that was coming about because just that's Moore's law, and that's what's going to be available in the embedded market as we progress forward. So that's about as far as we got last time. But that's it, really. It was quite, I know many people are off this week because it's a nice short week in the US, and a lot of people have taken it off to enjoy a long weekend and an extra break. So But yeah, that's all we got from last time.
Chris, there are some
Yes.
action items. Did they all get completed from last time? I can read through them if
I am
you want me.
hanging my head in shame because most of them have my name on them, and the answer is no. So I need to do those. One of them was
Right.
ping Marcin, which I managed to do 5 minutes, well, 40 minutes before the call today. So I appreciate Marcin jumping on, even though he's on a train. So
I will just put them at the bottom of the notes here, and I'll check off Marcin's, and then I'll leave the other ones for next time.
yeah, I'll
Okay.
do the other ones. So
And then we can add new ones when we're ready. Okay.
right. So I think last time we said we'd try and do the discussion of Zulip, but I actually think Marcin's suggestion of moving it to a GitHub PR makes a lot more sense, or a GitHub issue on the document on the repo. So we can do that, and I'll share it via Zulip. And here's a quick question: is everybody here on the Google group that we have for the embedded E-SIG? If you are, you'll get emails from me occasionally, or have got emails from me occasionally that say have come from the E-SIG. No? Okay. Then I will post it to Zulip predominantly. Just looking at places to advertise the conversation as well. Okay. So then I guess I am going to update the document. And I think to put Marcin's point, I'm going to start updating the document with the 512K of RAM, 1 megabyte non-volatile storage, make those changes in the document, and then we've them written down and we can battle over them in a PR. How does that sound?
Works for me.
Cool. Let's do that. All right. I haven't got anything else to talk about today. Just want to get this document out of the way so that we can move on to much more interesting things. So does anybody else have any other business to talk about? Anything they want to raise? If not, we can wrap up the call early and I can spend the time with the PR.
I just one more thing to discuss, and I'm not really sure if it fits in the E-SIG, but you mentioned that we're looking at the platforms that no one else is looking, and I think a different type of platforms like that are game consoles. I don't know if anyone in a WebAssembly world is actually looking at the game consoles. Do you know?
Games consoles?
Yeah, like Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch.
I don't know, but that's a really interesting question. And we should go and find out.
Those are a little bit probably a problem with platforms because dev kits are either not available or they're quite expensive. I would expect individuals to have them, probably some companies that have access to those. But yeah, we're definitely interested in the subset of game consoles. I just want to know if there's interest in that overall. It's just reacting.
Yeah, I think I got that. There's a lot of background noise there, Marcin, but I think I got it. So yeah, the dev kits are expensive, kind of limits the audience. And I saw Christoph Pettit put his hand up as well.
Yeah, sorry for joining late. I just realized that Veloren just introduced WASI Components into the latest plugin design. So we basically do have, I was involved in that, so I know about that. So, but Veloren is one of the larger Rust open source games, and it just introduced WebAssembly components as the plugin interface.
Cool.
And there's an ongoing patch about adding it for animation of figures.
Gotcha.
Marcin, can you mute? There's a bit of background noise coming from you. Thank you.
I know Marcin's stuck in a train at the moment. I appreciate calling in. Yeah, okay, so there's support in an open source game. So then I guess the question for Marcin and others would be, is there anything specific from an embedded point of view we would want to do for a games console, and something common between the dev kits that would get exposed? That's a good question, and I wouldn't know.
WASI GPU comes to my mind. So I know that there is some work ongoing to just putting window creation and also graphics output into a WASI standard. But that is, of course, not related to embedded. Or not directly.
Not directly, but possibly. Certainly, possibly. I think we should. So I think the way to drive the discussion is to add it to the document and there's a phrase I heard recently, which I kind of like, and it's take a strong view lightly. So put a strong statement in the document about whether or not we're going to support this, or it would be something that the E-SIG would look at, and then let people change their mind and take it out and see how we get on. So let's put it in for now. I'll put it in and let's see what happens. See if there's an objection or folks think it's out of scope for the E-SIG. But certainly, I think a lot of the GPU stuff would overlap, because we get questions around performance and throughput and access to hardware accelerators, which is a lot of what the E-SIG is going to do once we get the base platform defined, is look at those sorts of problems. So it's certainly on our roadmap. So I think it would be good to put it in there and see what people say. Then push the discussion towards GitHub so we can try and make some progress between our meetings, which we haven't been at the moment. Okay. And certainly, I think I might mention in order to generate some discussion and perhaps some views, I might put the old PlayStation, Xbox, games console question on the thumbnail for the YouTube video and see if it drives any further engagement. Also, Christoph, if there's interest in the games community and you're involved and you want to point them towards this discussion, that would be great too, in the documents. Happy to get some viewpoints on that as well.
Yeah.
And I guess likewise, Marcin, if you've got contacts with folks in the game console arena to forward on the discussion points, that'd be great. Okay. Ooh, well, we have come to the end of what I've got to talk about. So any other points for discussion? If not, I can wrap up the call early and start posting stuff up on GitHub.
I just have one thing which might be of interest. Because I've been using the component model in native compilation places, and I've been doing that with AutoSAR, which is basically the automotive software environment. And we have the problem of combining C++ and Rust with high-level data types, and this is working quite well. So I have a prototype of an AutoSAR adaptive stack written in Rust, interfacing with C++ programs. So with the unmodified C++ programs, and the interface between Rust and C++ is fully WIT-based.
Cool. That is pretty cool.
And that is using a modification of the ABI. So I needed a different ABI to just directly fuse the modules, because the normal canonical ABI is asymmetric. Calling and being called has different types of arguments. And once you harmonize this, you can directly link them to each other. And this is what I'm just using there.
Awesome. You know, what would be really cool is to, hopefully we're coming towards the end of this documentation, this target platform document. And it would be awesome if you were up for it, Christoph, you wanted to give a more in-depth presentation on that. I think that would be really useful.
Yep.
We could put some time aside for a future E-SIG and do some advertising so people know it's coming up.
Yep, please do.
That'd be great. I guess the European-based time zone would work best for you.
Yes.
Okay. So, well,
the other one is close to shortly after midnight, so it's not that convenient.
Yeah, I think it's yeah, I get that. So let's do that. I will reach out to you and schedule that, and then we'll do some advertising for the presentation slot on it.
There's
20 minutes?
There's already
I saw some Zulip posts on it.
Yeah, and also there is already an issue on a component model. I can just post that one. So I've been discussing with Luke about this one, and yeah, so it's a bit outside of the scope of the normal WebAssembly components, but it's interesting as a different opportunity to use them in a different environment. So
I think it's really cool because one of the questions I know that we've had and will be, it's part of our roadmap to discuss is love WIT, some of the questions around the rendering of it and should we change it? I know we haven't looked into it. It's just been an open question. So the work you've done would be really interesting just to see how that works and read up on the issues and the things you found out. That'd be really cool. So I think opening that up would be a great opportunity as we transition from the end of this documentation phase onto something new. So let's get 20 minutes, half an hour, and get an update from you, which would be really cool. Thank you very much for doing all that work.
Thank you for also doing all that work.
So, all right. So the new action item, schedule a time with Christoph for a 30-minute presentation. Is there a date that works for you? We can do it now. It's done. I like that. Less to-dos. There is a European Asia Sync Tuesday 17th in 2 weeks' time. Well, the next slot would be, I guess, 4 weeks after that in a European USA slot, which might be good for Luke and some of the. So shall we schedule it for Tuesday? I guess that makes it Tuesday, October 15th. It's a while away.
Yeah, but I feel Luke might be interested because he had been on vacation when I presented it during the component model meeting of the Bytecode Alliance. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool. And then, of course, we also have WASMCom coming up November 11th as well. I don't know who all's attending that one, but there's another opportunity for at least a in-person, face-to-face chat.
I will be there.
Great. Me too. All right. Okay, so we're going to schedule that for October 15th. Do a bit of a deep dive on that one. Brilliant. Okay. In that case, I keep saying we're going to end this call early. There's more interesting things to talk about. Okay, so this is the third attempt. Anybody got anything else you want to talk about? More than happy to, or we can wrap up the call. Going once, going twice. Thank you very much, folks. Listen, have a fantastic Tuesday or end of Tuesday. And I will see you on a GitHub PR. I've got 20 minutes of time back, and that's my focus. Get that up and in there. And I will stop the recording now.